Orange is the New Black is where we dive in. Every episode we'll discuss, even the scenes that made us cuss. So follow me, join the spree at Yadda Space with 2 E's. Spoilers everywhere, so be warned. Super fans, please come on board. Susie's specialized in all these ideas because we make it everything truly as it is.
Hello and welcome to Yadda Space. I'm Yadda and I'm so glad you're here. This is a rewatch podcast for the Netflix TV show Orange is the New Black. That means that there may be spoilers about things that happen in the future episodes, so please be warned. This is definitely a spoiler zone. Happy New Year and welcome back to Yadda Space. On today's episode of our Orange is the New Black rewatch, we will be discussing Season 2, Episode 1, titled Thirsty Bird. The IMDb synopsis for this episode says, Piper is awakened in solitary and without being given any information is forced to board a bus and a plane to whereabouts unknown. So yeah, I remember this episode. It's very much different from a lot of the other episodes that we've seen so far and a lot of the other episodes that we'll see in the future. So it's a bit of a one-off. Full disclosure, not my favorite episode personally, but we're going to get into it. We're going to be getting some new backstories from Piper this week, and so we'll get to know some more about her background. We have Jodie Foster back again as the director of this episode. This is her second of 2 episodes that she's directed of Orange, with Imaginary Enemies being her first one. And although she's more well known for her acting in movies like Silence of the Lambs, I love that she was able to put on her directing hat and give our little show some love too. Orange closed out Season 1 with these 2 writers taking the lead, and we once again have the talented Tara Herman back again as the head writer of this episode, as well as the show's creator herself, Miss Jenji Cohen. And as I always say, I know that there's more than one person in a writer's room, so I'd like to give a shout out to the entire writing team. Thank you all for writing such a great show. You guys told the stories that were not being told, and for that, we thank you. The IMDb rating for this episode is an 8.3, which is actually a pretty good rating for an episode. It shocks me a little bit because I don't remember this episode fondly, but we'll get into it. As always, at the end of this pod, I will give my personal episode rating, but I encourage you guys to go ahead and write your episode ratings in the comments as well so that we can get an idea of what we the people think is actually the rating on this episode. Okay, so let's get into it. When the episode opens up, we're in Shu with Piper. She's asleep in her bed with a book resting on her face when the guard comes in to tell her that it's time to get up, it's time to go. And she's really disoriented, but she has a couple of pages of notes on her floor. So I guess for this solitary stay, she decided to keep track of what was going on so she kind of could keep her wits about her. Piper asks the guard, "Is it breakfast time already?" And the guard goes, "No, but if you're hungry, you can lick yesterday's off the wall, nasty." Because apparently Piper smeared her eggs from yesterday all over the wall. But Piper insists it's not nasty, it's art. She says that she used her eggs to paint a yellow warbler on the wall, I guess a kind of bird, and it's drinking out of a daffodil. Piper says that the bird just cannot get enough, and so she calls it Thirsty Bird, which is the title of this week's episode. Piper says that it's not quite done yet, but the guard tells her that she will not be finishing it. So Piper's like, well, why not? What's happening? He does not answer her. Instead, he tells her to get up on her feet and asks her if she needs to pee. Piper looks scared, and understandably so. She's like, I need to know what's going on. She asks him if she's going to Max. And if we think back to the events of the finale of Season 1, we'll remember the last thing we saw Piper doing was smashing Tiffany's head in, basically, out of self-defense. But she was bashing Tiffany's head in, and so we don't know how that ended up as of yet. And so if Piper thinks that she's in Shu because of that, I can understand why she's worried that maybe they might have escalated her up to Max, because that was a pretty violent moment. But again, the guard does not respond about if she's going to Max or not. Instead, he escorts her out of Shu. And as they're walking out of the prison, Piper is asking him, is this about Pennsatucky? What happened to her? So Piper doesn't even know what happened to her. But again, the guard does not answer Piper. By the time they get outside of the prison, Piper's like, where are we going? And the guard tells her simply, into this van. Yeah, I think anybody would be pretty terrified to be getting into a van with these people and not knowing where you're going. And I remember watching this live when it first aired back in 2014. Geez, that's like Wow, more than 10 years ago now. And I remember just being so confused as to like, what is going on? Why are they taking her out of our prison? And where are the rest of our girls? Because as you guys know, I care about the cast as a whole. So why are we just with Piper? I was a little bit annoyed and a lot of bit confused. When Piper gets in the van, she's in there with 3 other male guards. It's not Morello driving the van this time. It's another male guard. So again, yeah, she's reasonably wary about this situation. And she asks them again, where are we going? But they ignore her. And instead, the guards start having a conversation about some girl that one of them met over New Year's. And the only thing I guess that's kind of important in that conversation is the fact that one of them refers to the girls as poochies, explaining that you can't say bitches no more. It's degrading. Okay. Poochies is no better. I promise you. Eventually, they get Piper back up to camp where she came from. And she sees one of the guards that she's familiar with, but they're talking about processing her out. And she's like, out of where? The shoe? Where am I going? But even the guard that she recognizes does not help her with any answers. She simply says, good luck with it, Chapman. Good luck with what? Piper is so confused, and so are we as the audience. So when we see Piper outside, they're leading her over to a big prison bus that has a sign on the side that says, warning, armed personnel. So yeah, she's getting into a bus to destination unknown with armed personnel. Very scary. Just before Piper gets on the bus, she tells the guard, listen, I still have basic human rights. You cannot put me on a mystery bus in the middle of the night and not tell me where I'm going. I demand to know where I'm being taken. But that's when the other guard says, well, I can't abide demanding poochies. Get your flat ass on the bus. Oh my God. These guys are awful. As the door closes, the first guard just waves to her menacingly, still not telling her anything about where she's going or what the hell is going on. So Piper finds her seat on the bus, and as she sits down, she starts banging her back up against her bus seat, having a little bit of a mini meltdown. And the bus driver looks back and tells her, hey, cool it, which leads us into a Piper backstory where she's a little girl, maybe 10 years old or so, and she's on the school bus. So on the school bus, Piper and her friends are planning on doing this winter break tradition where they jump out of the back of the school bus on the last day before winter break. And Piper's friends are trying to convince her, but it looks like she's getting cold feet. Piper tells them that if her dad finds out, she's totally getting grounded. But that's when her friend tells her, well, if your dad doesn't find out, maybe we'll be invited to Ryan's New Year's Eve party. Maybe we won't go into next semester being the same lame losers we are now. Damn, that peer pressure is real. But little Piper says, I don't have to jump off a bus to prove I'm fun. I'm fun. I know that's right, Piper. Even her friend says, well, I know that. It's just that nobody else really does. Okay, well, middle school. So it's about that time, and the bus driver slows down so that the kids can jump out the back because he's in on the tradition and he wants to make sure they're going to stay safe. But when it comes time to jump, Piper does not go. All of her friends hop out of the back of the bus. They say, yay, see you after break. And then when we see who's left on the bus, it's Piper, a white girl with glasses and a neck brace, and an Asian boy. That's it. Everybody else jumped. Even the bus driver comes over to them like, I slowed the bus to 5 miles an hour. Why didn't you jump? It's tradition. And little Piper says, unnecessary risk. To which the bus driver says, oh, you're one of those. And so Piper goes on to say, my dad says I should have strength of character and not be a lemming. Well, little Piper, did you live up to that? I don't know. That scene ends with Piper going to close the back door of the bus as we transition back over to the prison bus and our Piper looking confused as hell. There are a lot of other women on this bus with her. Some of them are behind another gate in the back of the bus, and some of them are in the front of the bus with her. All of them are sitting in their own individual seats, and all of them have their wrists and ankles cuffed. No one's talking to each other, and there's a guard that's walking up and down the aisle with a gun in his hand. Eventually, Piper asks one of the other ladies, do you know where we're going? And she just looks at Piper saying, well, I'm hoping for Mississippi. Piper's confused. She's like, how can they not tell us where we're going? This is so fucked. And so that's when Piper realizes that she should have peed back at the prison. She's got to go. She asks one of the guards if it's possible to stop for a bathroom, and he looks visibly annoyed, but they pull over. When they pull over, Piper's thinking that they might get a chance to pee, but instead, more inmates just get on the bus. And Piper, now getting uncomfortable, is saying, they have to let us pee, right? That's when an older lady sitting in front of Piper says to her, they're not going to let you pee. Nobody told you to wear a pee pad? Piper's like, a what? And that's when the lady explains that that's 2 maxis stacked, so they're like a maxi pad. I don't think it works like that, but okay. Piper tells this lady nobody told her about the double maxi because she's been in seg for the past month. A month. That's a long time down there. Eventually, they pull up at an airport, and Piper's like, an airplane? We're getting on a fucking airplane right now? I would be thinking the same thing. Like, where am I going? As they're having the ladies get ready to go on the airplane, they're examining them like they're animals, having them wait in line with blankets around their shoulders. But then as they come up to the guards, they're patting them down, they're searching their hair, they're telling them to open their mouths and stick out their tongues, like they're a dog or something. But, you know, I guess they're doing it for their own safety because sure enough, the marshal does find a blade under one of the girls' tongues, so I guess there's a point to it. I just wish it wasn't so inhumane. When he pulls the blade out from under her tongue, she quickly goes, "That's not mine." "Sure, girl, that's not yours." And then she spits in his face and curses him out as they're dragging her away. When it's Piper's turn, the marshal asks her if she's hiding anything, and she's like, no, just a very full bladder. But he's nice about it. He tells her to remind him on the plane and he'll get her to a bathroom, which, I mean, that's something. That's nice. Piper tells him thank you, and he says, thank you for not peeing your pants. So Piper tries to push it a little bit and says, hey, can you tell me where we're going? To which he says, nope, next. These guys are awful, but it is kind of funny. When Piper gets on the airplane, they sit her down next to one of my favorite inmates on the show, Lolly. So there's a saving grace for this episode for me. Even though I'm not a big fan of this episode, it's the episode where we're introduced to Lolly, so I'm happy about that. I really loved her backstory and getting to know her. I like getting to see how her mind works. And like my theme song says, listening to Lolly talk will sometimes make you rethink what you think you already know. Her brain works a little differently, and sometimes it's interesting to see things from a different point of view. Also, from my first watch through, I loved Lolly right off the bat, and for all these years, I did not even know who the actress was who played Lolly. When I found out in recent years that it was Lori Petty, the Lori Petty from my childhood, do you know how many times that I've watched A League of Their Own? Lori Petty played Kit, the kid's sister in A League of Their Own. I freaking love that movie. I freaking love her since I was a little kid. So yes, I was very excited to learn that fact about Lori Petty and the fact that she was able to bring her talents to Lolly. And it made me love Lolly even more. So shout out to Lori Petty. And I'm so happy that we're finally meeting Lolly. So when Piper finds her seat on the airplane, she's sitting right next to Lolly and another girl who is afraid of flying. When the girl who spit at the marshal and had the razor under her tongue got on the plane, we find out that they put a full mask over her face. So she's looking like Hannibal Lecter over here, which I think is a little bit of overkill, but that's what they did. The marshal comes by and finally lets Piper use the bathroom. When Piper gets back to her seat, another one of the marshals notices that her handcuffs are on really tight. And she says to her, she must have really pissed off whoever put those on. To which Piper says, I was a really demanding poochie, which makes Lolly laugh. Piper then says to the marshal, do you tell us where we're going or do you guys hand out blindfolds when we land? Ooh, Piper with the attitude. That does not help her get an answer. As Piper's sitting there talking to Lolly on the flight, Lolly starts using her pinky finger to dig into the crevices of her ear, where apparently she's got Vaseline stored. And then she takes that ear Vaseline and puts it on her lips. Girl, what are you doing? Lolly tells Piper that a friend of hers took this flight and she said that it was so long and so dry that her whole face almost cracked open. And then Lolly offers Piper some. No, she does not want any of your ear Vaseline. Thank you, though. That's when the other inmate who has the Hannibal Lecter mask on says to Lolly, I'll take some. It's dry as shit in here. But Piper's not willing to touch the ear glob. She tells the Hannibal lady, even if I was willing to touch her ear glob, and even if I could reach across the aisle with these shackles on and no guard noticing, what makes you think that I could get up underneath that mask of yours and touch your lips? Like, for real. The Hannibal girl says, well, fuck you then, bitch. You ain't even willing to try? No, it's not gonna work. Piper's like, well, sorry. Like, well, excuse me. That's when Lolly says, pointing at Piper, this one really thinks shit through, huh? I mean, I guess sometimes. But clearly not well enough because she's also on this prison plane with you. So that's when Lolly and Piper finally introduce themselves to each other. Piper asks Lolly, please tell me you know where this plane is going. Lolly says, nope. But if it's got heat and a bed, it's better than where I've been. Yeah, we will see later where she's been. And yeah, I guess that is an accurate statement. That's when Piper asks Lolly, so did you do something really bad? And Lolly says, well, it wasn't good. I really hate that she feels that way. If I remember correctly, and my memory is a little bit fuzzy, but I think her crime was a crime of circumstance and misunderstanding with a sprinkle of mental health issues, but we'll get there. And so that's when Piper shares that she did something bad. Her original crime was kind of bad, and then she did this other thing. And she starts to cry as she tells Lolly that she thinks that maybe she's going to be going away for it for a really long time. At this point, it looks like Piper thinks that she might have killed Tiffany. And so Lolly comes out and asks her, did you kill somebody? But Piper says, I don't know. She tells Lolly that this girl was coming after her and she wasn't going to stop. She tells Lolly that the girl was relentless and crazy, so crazy. And then she admits she completely lost it. And so Piper is sitting there processing aloud about how she was even able to go there to where she could just hit Tiffany like that and not stop. And it just gets increasingly more disturbing to her. And she starts to cry, saying, I couldn't stop. And all Lolly can say in response is, that's some shit, man. Oh, Lolly. After an announcement from the pilot about how there is no in-flight entertainment, we're then transitioned into another young Piper backstory where she's trying to get into see an R-rated movie, Dazed and Confused, when she's clearly underage. She looks like she's still about middle school age. So it looks like Piper and her friend got an older teenage boy to buy the tickets for them. And so when he gives them the tickets and walks off, Piper says to her friend, what if it's rated R because something really inappropriate happens? Something that scars us for life. Oh, little Piper, you're onto something, but it's not going to be from the movie. We'll get there. Piper's friend tells her, listen, relax, we got the tickets, just try to enjoy it. And so Piper looks down, trying to adjust. But when she looks up, she sees her dad across the street tonguing down some other woman. So while she was worried about seeing Dazed and Confused and that scarring her for life today, that's not going to be the thing, girl. That scarring is going to come from your dad. Her dad gets in the car with the woman and drives off. Piper looks clearly disturbed as her entire preteen world has been shaken, but all her friend cares about is going to go see the movie. Nice. Understandable for 12, I guess, but nice. Back on the prison plane, the plane is landing and Piper is just waking up from a little nap on Lolly's shoulder. And so Piper asks Lolly, how long was I asleep for? To which Lolly says, I don't know. I left my watch back with my freedom. Yeah, I love Lolly. Lolly makes me laugh. What can I say? Anyways. So they've landed and they're sitting at the airport when the marshal comes through and tells them that more inmates will be getting on and they are not to touch them and to keep all of their body parts to themselves. He then tells them that if they cannot manage to do that, that he will be arranging for a nice little spot and seg for them upon their arrival. So that tells us that they're going to another prison since there will be a shoe there. So a little bit more information, but not much. And so when the new inmates get on the plane, come to find out it's men. And so that's why they made all those announcements beforehand. One of them, a black guy with face tattoos, starts hitting on Piper, telling her, I got a seat for you, baby. Got it all warmed up for you. God. And he gives Piper the nickname of First Class. That's when one of the male inmates looks out the window and says, hey, I see mountains. I think we're in the Midwest. And one of the other male inmates says to him, ain't no mountains in the Midwest, dumbass. There's plains and corn and a shit ton of white people who don't vote in their best interests. No comment. When Piper looks out the window and notices a skyline, she knows that she's in Chicago. And again, the first time watching this live, it was so confusing as the audience. Like, why the hell are we in Chicago? They're driving through the streets of Chicago and I'm getting vibes from The Bear. I was binging that too recently. So Chicago is kind of top of mind right now, I guess. I'm like, hey, I know those streets. Shout out to The Bear. When their bus finally arrives at its destination, we find out that, yeah, they are at another prison and they're getting processed. Just like Piper's first day at Litchfield. Fingerprints, photos, squat and cough, all of it. So again, as the audience, we were like, what the hell? Why is she joining a new prison? Where are our girls? Where is Tasty? Where is Morello? Where is Nikki? Where is Daya? Where is Gloria? Where is Red? Where is Alex? Where are our people? We wanted to know. So when Piper is being escorted into her new bunk area, we find out that this is a co-ed prison. When the gates open for her area, the guard yells out and says, females walking, secure the unit. And so the male guards and the male prisoners who are cleaning, I guess, have to stand aside. And it looks like the male guards who are there are kind of watching to make sure everything stays safe, because this is a truly co-ed prison in a way that I don't think I've ever seen before, with men and women sharing the same space like this. So another difference that I noticed here with this Chicago prison versus Litchfield is that the guard is referring to Piper by her inmate number. Apparently it's 12781945. And Piper responds to that saying that that's her. Whereas at Litchfield, they refer to them by their last names, Chapman. So even though it might have felt a little bit more impersonal over at Litchfield when they use their last names that way, using their ID numbers over here at the Chicago prison seems a lot more impersonal to me. When Piper arrives at her new bunk, we find out that these are locked door multi-bed units, very small rooms with maybe 5 or 6 inmates in each. And then these 5 or 6 women are meant to share this one small room, including that small sink and toilet, for the duration of their time. In my opinion, a lot worse than Litchfield. When Piper enters her new room, she immediately pisses off all of her bunkmates because she steps on a cockroach. They start yelling at her to get off of it, and she's like, get off of what? So come to find out, Piper killed not only a cockroach, but their cockroach, and it was named Yoda. The ladies tell Piper that she owes them a replacement master roach, because in this prison, apparently they train these cockroaches to run cigarettes back and forth to solitary. And the thing that was so special about Yoda was that he was well trained and always came back. But Piper doesn't buy it. She's like, you guys are fucking with me, right? But no, these girls are dead serious. And so her new bunkmates tell her that by the end of the week, she needs to get them a replacement. It needs to be at least 2 inches long, but no bigger than 4. To which Piper tells them she'll do her best. Okay, so because, spoiler alert, we are not going to be seeing any of these inmates anymore beyond this episode, we're not going to get into the weeds with a lot of their little personality things. I will be giving you the highlights of things that are important to the story and things that stood out. So it turns out that Piper's bunk is over the one quote-unquote normal seeming lady in the room, but come to find out later on in the episode, she's just as crazy as the rest of them. But Piper doesn't know that yet. She keeps asking Piper birth chart questions, and one of the other girls in the room coughs to get Piper's attention. When she does, she shakes her head like, no, don't tell her. Why? We'll find out. But Piper heeds the warning and says, yeah, I'm not sure. So it's also in this scene that we learn about other things in this prison that are different from Litchfield. For instance, they stay in this one room all day long, except for mealtime and 1 hour a day for rec. And then 1 day out of the week, they get to go outside into the yard. So I guess if you don't like your bunkmates, that's a personal hell, for real, for real. Oh my goodness, to be stuck in a room with 5 other people, I would not like that. In the next backstory scene, we see young Piper coming in to try to tell her mom what she saw her dad doing by the movie theater with that other woman. So young Piper starts, and she tells her mom that she and Sarah went to the movies the other day. And then she stammers before telling her mom that she saw her dad there. And her mom's like, okay. So Piper goes on and says, well, he was with someone, a lady someone, and he kissed her. But her mother is clearly not willing to talk about this, and certainly not with her daughter. She looks and sounds like she's holding back tears, but instead of even acknowledging what young Piper said, she just responds, well, what movie did you and Sarah H. see at the Suffolk? And so although that's not really the point, Piper starts to tell her mom that they wanted to see Dazed and Confused. But before she can even get the sentence out, her mom cuts her off saying, Piper Elizabeth Chapman, you are grounded. That is an R-rated movie and you are not 17. She goes on and says, I don't even want you hanging around with that Sarah H. She is a bad influence, as she turns and starts cleaning the sink. And young Piper is standing behind her, almost with tears in her eyes, so confused, like, what the hell just happened? Why doesn't she care about what I said? And why does she care more about me going to this movie and not about what I just told her about my dad? Like, what the hell? It's like that TikTok sound. That must be so confusing for a little girl. But it looks like her mom is dealing with the situation in, I guess, the best way that she knows how, but to not even acknowledge what your daughter has seen and talk her through her feelings about it, her mom definitely dropped the ball here. Back at the Chicago prison, the ladies are getting ready for some yard time outside. When Piper gets outside, a group of ladies invite her to come hang out with them to stay warm. And so she does. They seem nice enough. Until Lolly comes over saying, hey, Piper, how you holding up? But as soon as she gets those words out, the head lady in this group says, I don't like your voice. Your voice annoys me. Keep walking. Rude. Lolly says, fuck you. I'm saying hi to my friend. You're damn right, Lolly. Like, who is this lady? And so the head lady asks Piper, is this your friend? Like that TikTok sound. Is this your friend? I'm going to miss TikTok. Can you tell? So when the lady asks Piper if she's her friend, Piper starts to say, yeah, you know, we met on the plane. But before she can even get that out, Lolly says, hey, I wouldn't start shit with her if I were you. She's here because she killed another inmate with her bare hands. And Piper looks at Lolly like, what the fuck? Why are you telling her that? And so Lolly looks Piper directly in her face and says aloud, what? You did? Lolly is a truth teller. And so the main lady seems like she has a little bit of respect for Piper, knowing that she's tough and knowing that she's been to prison before. And so she turns her attention back to Lolly and tells her again that her voice is annoying and she needs to get out of here. But Lolly says, fuck you, menopause. And the head lady says, fuck you, G.I. Jane Joe. And she shoves Lolly. Lolly says, oh, that's what we're gonna do now? And she shoves her back. And then they start to fight until Lolly is on the ground and this lady is up over Lolly, punching her in the face, very similarly to how Piper was punching Tiffany in the face at the end of the season finale. And Lolly looks over at Piper like, help, can you help me? But Piper is frozen in fear, in shock. I don't know, but she does not jump in to help Lolly at all. And before you know it, the alarms are sounding and all of the women have to go inside. When Piper looks up to get ready to go back inside, she sees Alex across the courtyard. And so she yells out, Alex! Alex hears her and turns around trying to get to her. But at this point, the guards are separating the ladies into their units. And so they don't get a chance to talk. But it's good to know that Alex is here. At least Piper sees a familiar face. That's gotta be good, right? We shall see. When Piper gets back inside, she sees the birth chart lady. And so Piper tells her that she saw somebody that she knows in the yard and she needs to find her. That's when we find out that while Piper is in Unit A and they go out to the yard with B and C, they only eat with A and they only have rec time with A. So they won't see Units B and C at all until yard time next week. When Piper sees the male inmate that she met on the plane, the one who calls her first class, she walks over to him to tell him that she needs a favor. And so Piper asks him to pass a note to Alex, even though she's not sure what unit she's in. When he asks Piper to describe what Alex looks like, she describes her as 5'9", long black hair, with secretary glasses. Yep, that's about right. But that's when he steps forward and asks Piper, well, what are you willing to give? And she's like, a kiss? Is that good enough? And he laughs in her face to the point where she's like, listen, this is important. Eventually they agree when he decides that what he wants are her panties. Great. So do we have this guy to blame for getting panties in Piper's head or what? I blame this guy for the events of season 3. Thanks, guy. I mean, it just might be where Piper got the idea because when she tells him that they haven't given her any new panties yet and that she's been wearing these for 4 days, he says to her, even better. And she looks shocked. Like this is the first time she's heard of this. So yeah, I'm blaming this guy. He's the spark for Pantygate. Blame him. But Piper agrees, telling him she'll be right back. I guess with the panties. When she comes back, she passes them to him, along with the note for Alex, and he sniffs them before walking off, leaving Piper standing there looking absolutely disgusted. So, in the next scene, Piper is laying in her bunk with the birth chart girl laying on top of her as she's sleeping. When Piper wakes up, the birth chart girl is like, I need you to tell me your birth time. Like, girl, what? Piper's like, I don't know. But the girl insists, tell me, before she licks Piper from her nose all the way up to her forehead. Disgusting. And so Piper finally says, 11:42. The birth chart girl says, AM or PM? Piper says, AM. Like, leave me alone, please. Whatever you want. And so the birth chart girl says, where? And Piper says, Connecticut. The birth chart girl looks absolutely out of her mind as she's still on top of Piper, but she finally says, thank you, and gets down. The next morning, the girl is talking to Piper, handing her food and snacks as if that never happened, and telling her about all the things that she found in her birth chart. There's something off with this girl. All of a sudden, Piper gets up saying that she's got to go. When she walks by the gate of their unit, Alex is standing there. I don't know if she saw her or if she knew she was going to be there at that time, but whatever. However this came to be, Alex is here and they're having this conversation by the gate. Piper starts panic spilling, telling Alex that she thinks that she's dead. She must be dead. I killed her. Until Alex is like, killed who? Who are you talking about? And when Piper says Pennsatucky, Alex is like, what? Pennsatucky is not dead. You fucked her up pretty good, but that piece of shit is very much alive. So very good. Confirmed. Piper is not a murderer. She did not kill Tiffany. Alex tells Piper, you are many things, but murderess is not one of them. So once Piper processes that, she asks Alex, what are you doing here? Actually, what am I doing here? And Alex looks confused, like, how don't you know? She says to Piper, for the trial, dumbass. Apparently, Kubra is being extradited, which is a word that I had to look up because I'm not familiar with it, so I'll let you guys know what it means too. We'll learn together. Extradite, a verb meaning to hand over, usually a person accused or convicted of a crime, to the jurisdiction of the foreign state in which the crime was committed. And so that's why they're here. Piper is relieved, saying to Alex, so that means that all of this is only temporary? Like, thank God. And so while Piper is processing that all of this is temporary, she eventually comes back around to Alex saying, but you hate me. And all of this shit, I forgot that you hate me, but you're talking to me. So does this mean that you don't hate me anymore? I mean, yeah, I think that I'd be a bit confused too. But Alex just says, it means that I'm not holding grudges today. I'm happy to see you. Eventually, Piper asks Alex, when is the trial? And so Alex tells Piper, now, I guess. They can call us at any minute. Damn, how come Alex knows everything about the trial, but Piper's in the dark? This is when Alex gets serious with Piper, and she says, listen, we cannot say that we knew Kubra. She explains to Piper that revenge is part of his business model. Sick, deep revenge. So what Piper needs to do is disassociate. She needs to pretend that she never knew him. Alex tells Piper, you never fucking met him. But Piper's like, that means lying under oath. But Alex insists. She's telling Piper that Kubra is never going down for this. Alex says, there is no justice, Piper. Don't you know that by now? Damn. In the darkest moments of this show, that could be the tagline. There is no justice, Piper. Don't you know that by now? Alex goes on and tells Piper, so we will lie to protect ourselves. Or I will. And I hope you do too. Which leads us into another backstory scene with young Piper. It looks like she's sitting with a milkshake with her grandma, and she asks her grandma, did you know that my dad cheats on my mom? And her grandma looks at her confused, like, no, and how did you know that? But little Piper says matter-of-factly, I saw him kiss another woman, and then they got in a car together. She says that her dad is pretty much a big hypocrite. Little Piper goes on to tell her grandma that when she told her mom got mad at her. But her grandma excuses it, saying to little Piper, well, could you imagine your mom having any other reaction? To which young Piper says, no, not really. Well, that's not great. So as young Piper processes that, she eventually looks up at her grandma saying, wait, are you saying I shouldn't have said anything? He's a cheater. That's wrong. But her grandma says sometimes it's not a matter of right and wrong. It's about making a choice that will cause the least amount of pain to others. She encourages Piper to keep things to herself and to sit on information and feelings, living with her secrets. Lord, that is not good advice. Maybe I've spent too much time in therapy, but that sounds like a trauma response to me, and not very good advice to be giving to a young girl. Even young Piper says, that sounds horrible. And her grandma admits, oh, it is, dear. My goodness, horrible, horrible. And the cycle continues. When we get back to the Chicago prison, Piper is sitting and enjoying a cup of coffee that Larry's dad, her lawyer, brought to her for their meeting. Piper's trying to be cool and cordial, but he is trying to keep it strictly business. I am here as your lawyer, and that is it. Thank you. Okay, so Larry's dad tells Piper that Kubra was actually extradited from Europe to stand trial here in the US. And so the point of the trial today is that the prosecution is looking for witnesses that can help them to piece together Kubra's crime timeline. And so Larry's dad's first question is, have you ever met Kubra? And Piper responds with, it was a confusing time. And he's like, yeah, I'm sure, but like, it's a pretty straightforward question. Yes or no? And so Piper decides to tell the truth. She says, yeah, I knew him. But then she asks Larry's dad about her safety if she testifies. Is she going to be okay? Is this a safe thing to do? But Larry's dad assures Piper that the prosecution has been working on this case for over 5 years. He tells Piper that lying is not an option. And the case is pretty tight. This guy is most likely going away for a very long time. And so Piper's lawyer tells her that lying is not an option. Piper shares with Larry's dad that telling the truth wasn't much of a priority in her family. She says that their vibe was basically, as long as everybody smiled for the Christmas picture, just lie it up. Who cares? No big deal. But again, Larry's dad encourages Piper to tell the truth, telling her, I wouldn't carry on your family tradition here if I were you. This is about crime and punishment and justice. You need to tell the truth. And so Piper agrees. When it's time for Piper to show up to the court hearing, she finds herself in a prison van with Alex. And when they're alone, she tells her, I don't know if I can do it, meaning lie on the stand. But Alex is like, what? We have got to go in united on this. It'll be a red flag if you say you knew him and I say I don't. They'll know that I'm lying. But that's when Piper says, ever so innocently, well, maybe we should just both be honest. But Alex, getting increasingly more intense, almost scared and desperate, says this is not the time to be taking some moral high ground. That's when Piper says to Alex, you know, I only seem to be faced with these extreme moral choices when I'm with you. To which Alex says, exciting, right? No, it's stressful. Alex tells Piper that this is the only way that she can keep her safe now. She tells Piper, you have to do what I'm telling you. Piper looks at her dead-faced and says, or what? We're over? Like, what are you going to do? Alex says, no. Actually, I want to be your prison wife. And to that, Piper just rolls her eyes, saying, I'm glad you can make jokes. Piper tells Alex that she needs to do the right thing for a change. She feels like she has to. Piper goes on to tell Alex that truthfully, she can't keep her safe anyway. And Alex says nothing because Piper's kind of right. When Piper gets on the stand at the trial, she takes her oath and she sits down ready to tell her truth. But somehow when the court door opened up, of course, she gets a glimpse of Alex. And so Piper looks like she's questioning what she's going to say here. The lawyer asks her how she became involved with Kubra's drug ring. And so Piper says it was through her girlfriend at the time, Alex. She goes on and answers that no, they're not together anymore. But at the time, she was the love of her life. When the lawyer asks Piper if it was Alex who introduced her to Kubra, Piper says, I don't recall. The lawyer tries again, saying, okay, well, did someone else make the introduction? And again, Piper says, I don't recall. So the lawyer, getting a little bit irritated, says, okay, are you saying that you never met Kubra? And to that, Piper says, not that I can recall. Larry's dad is sitting in the courtroom looking completely disappointed with her answers. But Kubra is sitting in that courtroom very pleased with Piper's answers. That's when the lawyer says to Piper, you are aware of the consequences of lying under oath, correct? And Piper says, yes, of course. The lawyer says, and your responses remain the same? Piper simply says, I was there for Alex. She was what I paid attention to. Who I paid attention to. Everything else was just background. And then she ends her statement with, I'm sorry that I can't help you more. And that's probably the truest statement that she said on that stand. In the next scene, we see Piper sitting alone, locked in a really tiny cell. When Larry's dad, her lawyer, comes out, he's basically yelling at her, telling her that she broke the law again. Like, he gets why she did it. Clearly, she loves Alex, but he can't represent her anymore. And so he leaves, telling her, good luck. When he leaves, we get one last backstory in this episode, and it was a time when Piper and Alex were with Kubra overseas. So as they're all hanging out by the pool, Kubra eventually has to take a business call, and so when he does, Piper excuses herself to go call her dad for his birthday. Alex starts to tell Piper to tell him that she says hi, but then Piper reminds her that he doesn't know about her. She does not exist. So apparently Piper's not only keeping her activities a secret, but also her relationship as well. Seems like she's heeding her grandmother's advice and thinking that her lies are going to be protecting her dad's feelings. Maybe. But personally, I'd rather tell a hard truth than a soft lie. As Piper's on the phone with her dad, it seems like the lie that she's told him is that she's traveling Europe with Polly, staying with Polly's parents' friends, and it's all very safe and very above board. A far cry from what's actually going down, because she's actually traveling the world with her drug trafficking girlfriend and her drug cartel. At the end of the conversation with her dad, he tells her, you're a good girl. She says, thanks, Dad, and then quickly gets off the phone saying, I gotta go. Happy birthday, Daddy. In the very last scene of this episode, the last minute and a half tops, is probably the part of the episode that sticks out the most to me. When that flashback is over, we see Alex stepping out of the elevator back at the Chicago prison with her lawyer. Except Alex is not in inmate gear. She's in street clothes. When Piper sees her, she says, Alex, I did what you said. Alex comes over to Piper saying, listen, everything just happened so fast. And that's when Piper realizes she's not in khaki. She's not in orange. What the hell is going on? Alex says, I had to tell the truth. And Piper is looking at her wide-eyed. Piper says, are you fucking kidding me? Where are you going? And so Alex's lawyer starts to pull her away. exiting the prison, leaving Piper in this tiny little cell saying, "Are you fucking kidding me? Where are you going?" And all Alex is saying is, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Piper. I'll write you. I need to explain." And so Piper is in this tiny little cell yelling out to Alex as she's walking out of the prison saying, "You're getting out? What the fuck did you do, Alex?" And Piper is screaming and crying, just absolutely beside herself, saying, "Fuck you, Alex. Fuck you." I mean, you can absolutely feel Piper's frustration here to be betrayed like that. Absolutely insane. And eventually, we get our orange screen indicating the end of the episode. What a way to start the new season. As a reminder, IMDb rated this episode an 8.3, which off the top of my head, I think is a little bit high for this episode. But let me think about my rating for a moment. Off the top of my head coming in, I already knew that this was one of my least favorite episodes, probably my least favorite episode, and I'm probably going to have to go ahead and rate it as such, simply because, as you know, the thing I love the most about this show are the characters. I love the ensemble cast. I love our ladies over at Litchfield. A whole episode only about Piper with a whole bunch of people that we don't know and many of which we'll never see again. It's not my favorite episode. I'll just say that. What can I say that's good about this episode? I did find Piper's backstories interesting. I think that her whole relationship with the truth and consequences of telling the truth was an interesting story to tell. And of course, the last 2 minutes of the episode where it's revealed that Alex is getting out and apparently turned on Piper on the stand in order to save her own ass. Yeah, that was a very interesting way to reintroduce Alex to the show. Because as someone who's not even an Alex super fan, even I'm interested about what's going on there. She did do Piper dirty though. And we'll see how that turns out for her. But I think for me, and this is probably just a me thing, but the best thing about this episode for me was that it introduced Lolly. I love Lolly, one of my favorite characters. I can go on and on. I'm just very glad that she was introduced in this episode. And from here on out, I will always get excited every time we get a chance to see Lolly. So with that said, so far over the course of our Back to Litchfield journey, the lowest rating I have given to an episode was a 7.5. And that was for Imaginary Enemies, Miss Claudette's backstory episode back in season 1, episode 4. That episode at least had the rest of the girls in the prison. So I'm going to have to rate this one slightly lower than that at a 7.4. But guys, that's just me. Please comment your favorite lines from the episode and let me know what your personal rating is for this week's episode. Mine again is a 7.4, probably the lowest for the series for me. But what do you guys think? I would love to hear yours. The next episode we will be rewatching is season 2, episode 2, titled Looks Blue, Tastes Red. The IMDb synopsis for that episode says, a job fair is being held at the prison which Tasty attends. Red must face being alone, and Pennsatucky leaves the shoe. I remember watching that episode in real time and being so glad to be back at Litchfield with our ladies. Back to Litchfield. But really, for me, it felt like a breath of fresh air. And having a Tasty backstory in that episode felt like a reward after a complete Piper episode, so I cannot wait to get into that one next time. As always, thanks for hanging with me in Yadda Space. Just so you know, I've been having such a good time chit-chatting with you guys about Orange is the New Black. I am just a neurospicy lady trying to break out of my shell. Self-promotion does not come easy, but I know it's a must to keep the podcast going. Every time you guys listen to the podcast, you like a post, you comment, or you share a post on social media, you're helping this little podcast to grow, and I can't thank you enough for the love and support. If you've been hanging out in Yadda Space for a while now and you're enjoying the Back to Litchfield podcast, please consider leaving the podcast a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. Also, if you're able and want to go the extra mile, please consider checking out our Patreon. Joining the Prison Moms tier helps to literally keep the lights on for this little one-lady show, and it gives you early ad-free episodes, access to our exclusive Back to Litchfield chat right on Patreon, and honorary producer credits for the podcast. And be sure to follow us on your favorite social media apps for bonus content from the show, as well as updates about the podcast. And if ever you're searching for the pod, remember, it's just like the theme song says, Yadda Space with 2 E's. Thanks again for your continued support. It means so, so very much. I'll catch up with y'all next time here at Yadda Space.
Hey, welcome friends to Yadda Space. I'm Yadda here, let's set the pace. This is a rewatch podcast, so let's begin. Orange is the new black is where we dive in. Tasty's wisdom sets the tone.